Dear friends, thank you for practicing together and having such a wonderful ceremony. I wrote up here on the top of the board some description of those steps of that meditation. There's a lot there. You could simplify it, like take up your seed as an object of meditation, step 1. Step 2, look deeply. Step 3, harvest, right? But that to give it more of that a flavor of how you can enter into, especially the looking deeply and the listening deeply, Think in terms of the constructs that we use to talk about the practice, like what nourishes, what detracts, what supports, what takes away. Is it wholesome? Is it unwholesome condition, right? And those sorts of things are just helping the discerning mind to develop slowly, little by little, and be okay with either one, right? But to see the differences, right? And invite interbeing, by the way that you ask those questions, and feel into the interbeing. It's mind, heart, and body. Like feel into what these thoughts mean, what these conditions that support your happiness are like. Right? So you really know them, and it's not just ideas. And then when you carry it forward into step 3, that understanding you've gained from looking into that seed, it's got some energy in it. You're really connected to it. Your inspiration is more solid than if you're just saying, oh yeah, my seed has this and that in it, and it's all intellectual, right? Really, so that's the whole idea with meditation. Meditation is to bring the subject and object together. And I, as the meditator and the thing that I'm meditating on, I'm going to connect deeply. We are going to become one, right? And in that oneness, understanding can emerge. Yeah, that's the idea. So, but those steps there, if you wanted to have that clarity. And again, it's a very gentle but yet also clear way to work with our spiritual meditative practice, to help ourselves deepen the sense of where we are in relationship to all this sort of sometimes tumultuous experience of life. For many of us, we practice breathing in and out to come home to ourselves, and as you're coming home, you're like, oh my God, I have no idea what's going on in here, right? And it's just all kinds of things coming up and moving around. And I remember in my first Dharma discussion circle ever, someone saying something about their sitting and being like, oh, it was so wonderful sit. I could see each thought as it arose and identify it. And I was like, what? Okay. You see each thought as like I could know what I was thinking about after, right? After it happened. They're like, oh yeah, I just got really carried away by that. But not as it, right? So we're getting to know that inner space. And this is a wonderful way to give us kind of a program of study, if you will. But it's on your own time, on your own terms, and with the things that are most meaningful and important to you. You come home and start to take that inventory, start to understand what's there and how to take care of yourself on that level. Yeah. And meditation is not just like a sit quiet and do nothing thing. It can be an incredible exercise in looking deeply. However, to do this kind of looking deeply meditation, you also need to sit quietly and do nothing. Right? We need to have that ground. To be able to do step 1, you have to already be able to settle in. If I try to do this while I'm agitated, this is not what this is. This is when you're settled, taking up your agitation as an object, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. Thank you for being on the path of the Bodhisattva, dear friends. I know this is one of my favorite things to talk about because, like, there's no notes. Sattva means being. Bodhi, in this context, awakened being. Now remember the noun and the verb. So you can also understand this as an awakening being. For me, and I think for many of us who have been raised in a modern, post-industrial kind of consciousness, we can understand this. And then we hear the words like Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of great understanding, and we're very confused because it sounds like it's a person. We're like, who's that guy? Right? Where's that? And then you see a statue, an artistic expression in sculpture of Manjushri or Avalokiteshvara. Avalokiteshvara is probably the most common. Sometimes standing beautifully with arms out and a vase with water pouring out of it, the nectar of compassion, feet on a lotus flower in the midst of a raging ocean full of dragons and monsters. Right? You see this and you go, oh, and then we do a ceremony like we did a few minutes ago, and we say, I bow in gratitude to Manjushri, the Bodhisattva of great understanding. And it's, for me, I had to sort of say, yeah, there's something here, and I'll make sense of it in my rational mind, because that's what I'm trained to do. So I'll say, excuse me, yeah, that's like an old story, and it's a nice picture of something to try to make a sort of an archetype and something that is really beautiful and inspiring. And the way I relate to that is like I have to find that capacity in myself. Right? So I'm not actually touching the earth to Manjushri, some being somewhere. I'm touching the earth to recognize that I have the capacity for great understanding in me. And I'm going to let Manjushri remind me of that. Right? Did any of you relate to this? Yeah. So that's how I learned to approach. I had to approach this in the beginning, because my mind couldn't make sense of that there was some entity somewhere that had manifested this power of great understanding, and I have to somehow reach out and connect to them. But that's also because I didn't have my heart open at that time in such a way that the spiritual dimension was real for me. It was a nice idea. But as I continued to practice, and also to travel and explore other parts of the world, where I was meeting people who had a different experience of this, who for them, Manjushri was very real. And right there. And how could I not connect with that? And I'm like, wow, is this like, am I back in my grade school days of learning about gods and demigods and spirit beings, and this whole systems of theology and explanations of the making of the earth and angelic beings and all of that. This is all opening me because I want it to be very practical. I want to be able in my daily life to say, okay, I have the capacity to understand someone, so that's what I do. And little by little, my heart starts opening in a bigger way. And what I mean by that is when we start to do this kind of looking deeply, and we open ourselves to interbeing, we start to lose the attachment to the sense of me, self, and you, other, right? And those boundaries get softer. And our hearts are opening to experience something that's underneath the surface. And so we've been talking about this in the retreat. I've been thinking about it every single time I go into the washroom too, because somebody put these gatas all over the place. Defiled or immaculate, increasing or decreasing. These concepts exist only in our minds. The reality of interbeing is unsurpassed. I once wrote that into a little song, had drums and everything. The reality of interbeing is unsurpassed. So slowly over time, my practice has brought the experience of the Bodhisattva as an awakened being, as an awakening being, to life in new ways. One is that when there isn't a distinction between the ultimate dimension and the relative dimension, where the two are the same, like the wave and the water, they are the same thing, right? In that way, I can look around me and I see all of you, and I really experience you as bodhisattvas, awakened beings, right? With me in my daily life, walking through life. But also there's another dimension, which I'm now sharing with you, but not just with you, that the bodhisattvas that we speak of course, if we're going to speak of them, we have to give them a name. So I might give one the name Emer, right? And another the name Han, right? I might say that, right? But I can also, there's a bodhisattva, Manjushri. And Manjushri for me is a spiritual entity. Is an entity, a being, who lives in a spiritual space. So that who-ness is the trick, because the mind immediately goes self and puts me as other than that self, right? But in a spiritual dimension, there aren't those boundaries. There aren't those distinctions. But what we have are spiritual entities, spiritual beings, a being of understanding, the living energy of understanding, the living energy of compassion, the living energy of virtue and goodness. These energies of fearlessness, of faith, of confidence, right? These energies, they are there and they get to manifest in the relative dimension, in the world, through us. Yeah. Our practice is a doorway for these spiritual beings to be revealed in the world. So this could be an observation I make of myself in my daily life when I'm offering my presence and my understanding and my love. I could say, I'm being compassionate. Someone is suffering and I'm being present to be with them in suffering, right? Compassion, like I'm going to accompany your suffering, right? I'm going to be there. I'm being compassionate. That is very different from this. Compassion is revealed in the world. Compassion manifests. There's no me here. There's no you there, right? Here there's me and you, self and other. Here, this is the opportunity. This is how we see the Bodhisattva is revealed in the world. So I become, you become, we become the thresholds through which the Bodhisattvas emerge into our daily lives and into the world. You cannot say that you cannot lay claim to compassion, to think it belongs to you as something you can give. Like a little present all wrapped up just for the person that you choose. No. Where does it come from? Use the eyes of interbeing and we see where it comes from. It's unfathomable to our rational minds. And that was my struggle in the beginning of my practice. But emerging from the spiritual dimensions of our life into the world through our actions, right? The Bodhisattvas live in the world. Okay, enough. We'll go have the fun part. Manjushri. The Bodhisattva of great understanding. Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva of great compassion. Samantabhadra, the Bodhisattva of great action. What does that look like to you guys? It's right there. It's the picture of the human being. Head, heart, and hands. Mind, speech, and body. Right there. This is a print which is in every layer of our practice, through and through and through, built into the tradition, and it's thousands of years old. And these beings are carrying the Sangha on the spiritual dimension. Manjushri Avalokiteshvara Samantabhadra, head, heart, and hands. But in the Plum Village tradition, we have a couple more. Ksitigarbha. Ksitigarbha is the bodhisattva who makes a great vow, the deep determination to stay close to those who suffer, to be stable and fearless in the hell realms, who has a deep knowing of their own awakened nature and a deep presence that vow can help them, that strength can help them to not get distracted so that they always have energy, not to have leaks in their daily life, so that they always have enough energy to be present where there is suffering and darkness. Yeah. Known as a great, great aspiration or vow. And Sadaparibhuta is very close to Ksitigarbha. Well, they're all close, right? But Sadaparibhuta is known as never disparaging. Sadaparibhuta always sees the Buddha nature in each person and being that they meet. In some parts of the world, you can go and you see practitioners who want to emulate Sadaparibhuta, and they really want to learn it. And so they walk around in their lives, and every time they come face to face with someone, they touch the earth. So they are really stopping to say, I'm really going to come home to myself so I can look at this being in front of me, this other living being in front of me, as if they are an awakening being, as if they are a Buddha to be, as if they are something precious, something so wonderful. So never disparaging. I don't get caught on looking at how someone's coming up short or what their mistakes are. You're not criticizing, you're not condemning. You're always looking for where the beauty and the opportunity and the possibility are, and expressing that. I do this practice with my children because I want to allow Sadaparibhuta to come into my home. When you know someone really well, you know about their suffering. And not just their suffering, but you know the suffering they cause. You know the ways in which their behaviors work and don't work for you. And you see it, right? So you're very aware. And our tendency in general is to always focus on what's not going so well, where the problems are. And that comes from a need in us to be able to protect ourselves when there are real dangers and threats. So it's got a valid base. However, the tendency to lean towards what's wrong, what I don't like, where I suffer, means that we have to put extra energy in the other direction to build up that those eyes that can see beauty, that can see potential, that can see wonder and awe and can revel in that, and can help wake up that smile in the other person. So I practice in my meditations, these kinds of meditations, but I don't use a seed, I use my child as the object. And I sit and I just contemplate their wholesome nature and find all the things I appreciate about them, all the things I'm grateful about for them, and And I try to wake up in myself a picture of them realized and beautiful, not suffering and stressed out and afraid, right? So if I do that well, then when I walk into the room with them and I see them, right, that's the energy in me, I see them, what is that going to draw forward from them, right? When someone looks at you and is happy to see you, how do you feel, right? When someone looks at you and they're not happy to see you, or they don't want to look at you, how do you feel, right? What does it wake up? What seed does it touch in the other person? So Sadaparibhuta is in this practice space of like always wanting to build the wholesome path and the connection and to see that possibility. And one of the most powerful examples of this in the stories of the Buddha's teaching is when he met the murderer Angulimala. And this was a man who had already murdered dozens of people, and he was on a quest to get a nice long necklace of thumbs that he cut off his victims. And right, he was really lost. Yeah. And the Buddha, and everyone's terrified of him. Even the authorities trying to get a hold of him and subdue him were scared of him, right? So they only go if they had like an army to try to meet him, right? They're so frightened. And the Buddha wasn't frightened because that's not what the Buddha saw. The Buddha saw a man who was suffering, but also that he had the potential to wake up. And he went and he met him and he was able to touch that seed of awakening, which was buried and buried and buried and buried underneath there. He was able to touch that and wake it up. And within weeks, that man was on a journey into his spiritual life and into his awakening and into a sort of a redemption from his path. It was not easy for him because he had accumulated a lot of karmic push in a negative direction collectively, as well as in himself. And so there was a lot of pushback from that. It's a very interesting story to read about. But that's the Buddha manifesting Sadaparibhuta. Like, I see in you, I don't see you just someone who should be destroyed because of how evil and bad you are. I see that there's a seed of awakening in there and I think I can touch it. And he went there. I'm not saying that we should just do that with everybody. The Buddha knew his capacity. The Buddha also stood in front of a raging elephant that was tearing down the street and held up his hand, and the elephant met him and could sense his compassion and love and didn't trample him, right? I don't recommend going in front of a bulldozer of suffering and just saying, I see your beautiful awakened nature. You know if you see it. It's not an idea, right? It comes from somewhere else. But Sadaparibhuta, in our daily life, we can wake up in small ways. Our perceptions about each other, check them. Are they really correct? Is it really supportive to the well-being of this person if I'm constantly nagging at them, telling them what's wrong, right? Those kind of things. These are the small ways that Sadaparibhuta can come into our life. And this has been a very important part of the Plum Village practice too. You can see how Ksitigarbha needs his friend Sadaparibhuta. Yeah. If you want Ksitigarbha, you want to be in the hell realms, you want to be in the situations of suffering, you have to have behind you, you've got to have Sadaparibhuta there, backing you up, helping you to see the possibility, or else you will get drowned in the suffering. Right? And these two bodhisattvas were very important in Thich Nhat Hanh's life. Even in the midst of the darkest hellroom, to stay present, to maintain the practice, not to despair. And to see the possibility of awakening in everyone, and not to discriminate, right? Not to discriminate. Just because they look different, just because they belong to a different political party, just because they whatever, right? You don't see those lines when you practice Sadaparibhuta. You only see the possibility of beauty and truth that can be revealed. Yeah. Thay landed in France. he was granted asylum in France. France is no friend to the Vietnamese. And from a certain perspective, right? He grew up watching his friends oppressed and killed by the French colonizers, right? And yet he was there. He did not hesitate to offer his compassion and his presence to every person he met on the street, anyone who would come to listen. Yeah, Sadapaributa and Ksiti Garba. So these are the bodhisattvas, the image of the human being in three actions: head, heart, and hands, and then supported by these great vows and great love. There's one more in Plum Village which is really beautiful and important that we remember often, actually known as a Buddha, not a bodhisattva, but pretty close. Maitreya. Maitreya is sometimes thought of as the Buddha to be born, yet to be born, the future Buddha, right? In Maitreya's name, there is Maitri. And Maitri is the word that is translated as loving kindness. When you study the four immeasurable minds, and we hear it in the mindfulness trainings, it's twice in the mindfulness trainings, you have kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, right? And when we do metta meditation, metta is coming from Maitri. This is loving kindness meditation. So this is the Buddha of loving kindness meditation. But it's also interesting, Maitri also comes from the word mitra. And mitra means friend. Friendship. The love and the kindness that supports, that is the substance of friendship. Real friendship. Spiritual friendship. Kalyana Mitra, a spiritual friend. Right? So Maitreya is the Bodhisattva, the Buddha of the Sangha. And that's why Thai would say the future Buddha is not going to be a person, but a Sangha. Because the substance of Maitreya is friendship. And that can't exist in one person alone. It has to live between us. And so when we build beautiful relationships, we build relationships built on presence and understanding and compassion with each other, right? We are opening the door for Maitreya Buddha, the Bodhisattva of friendship and love, to manifest in the world. It's a wonderful thing. It makes me so happy to see how the practice of tens, hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people around the world, right, who in these recent generations have made an effort to renew their spiritual life and practice, and maybe inspired by this tradition or maybe others, but we can see everywhere this friendship growing. Just within the Plum Village communities, we can see this. And you see Manjushri and Avalokiteshvara and Samantabhadra and Ksitigarbha and Sadapari Buddha manifesting in sanghas everywhere. And there's a line in one of the chants for Avalokiteshvara that talks about how multitudes of practice centers are born from this compassion. And I see that. When I look at the world and I see, if you look at a map of the world and you were to put a dot where there's a group of people who get together to practice this friendship, it's everywhere. It's all over. Yeah. And I think of how precious that is, and how this love and inspiration is born out of the fires of suffering and pain. And yet it's so alive in us. We feel it right now. And a little bit everywhere. So on the practice level, this big inspiration that I want to share with you in the light and shape of the Bodhisattvas and the Buddhas and our manifestation, our allowing them to manifest in the world through our lives. On a practical level, it all comes down to these things that we do in a very simple way, right? Even the moment we arrive on retreat and we start to listen to the bell and we start to come back to our breathing and our bodies and all of that is all a part of this. It's all a part of this. The way that we offer this true friendship to ourselves. When you practice deep relaxation, when you put down your burdens, when you take a minute to just breathe and embrace the stress you've been feeling and the worry. This is the friendship we're giving to ourselves. This is Maitreya wrapping Maitreya in an embrace of practice, of mindfulness. All of our parts and all of our ancestors along with us. Right? We come home to ourselves here and now, and we come home to all that we carry across time and space. Wave and water together. So we were befriending ourselves and all of our parts. And in the ways that we then, in our daily life, practice this with each other. And I befriend you, and you befriend me, and we befriend each other. All of their parts, right? Just like I want to come home and learn to have a beautiful relationship with all the different parts of myself, I need also to endeavor, I need the support of these bodhisattvas and my sangha to do that with others too, to befriend all of their parts also. All of themselves. And then when we do this deeply, we open up the fifth level of manifestation. Where we transcend self and other. And our action isn't concerned with me or you or this collective or that collective, but it truly comes from the depths of the water. Right? Maybe that's close to complete karma. Where the ripple effect that comes from the action that arises from the ultimate dimension the ripple it's not benefiting this or that, or me or you. Like the bodhisattvas and the way that they manifest. Any heart that opens with compassion is a doorway for Avalokiteshvara. Not just the folks that I like or agree with, right? I transcend that separation, that disparity, yeah. So our actions can manifest on this level too. Transcendent, spiritual space. This is what is meant by emptiness, right? Emptiness is empty of a separate existence. It's not nothingness. If it were nothingness, we'd call it nothingness. But it's empty. It's empty of all the grasping and the knowing and the thinking and this taking hold of and trying to make it into this versus that, or this different from that, or this better or worse than that. Feeling more than, feeling less than. All of those experiences are not relevant in that space of emptiness. Empty of attachment to self and other. Free to manifest true action in the mind, in the heart, in the body. When we look at each other and we see a person in front of us, we see what we call their sign, the mark, the appearance of the person. And I might start to qualify that. You might do it with color, you might do it with age, you might do it with gender, you might do it in any number of ways. You start to take this expression of a being that's in front of you and immediately put it into all kinds of designations, and we start to relate to the person through our designations, the signs, the marks, and the appearances, right? And what we think those mean. And not directly relating to that brilliant being that is in front of us. And so these practices of looking deeply and opening our hearts to the emptiness of ourselves and the emptiness of the other self are to see the radiance of all the wonders that actually are there and make space for that. Tai said that whether or not we succeed in our practice depends on whether or not we can touch signlessness. Meaning whether we can look beneath the surface, whether we are willing to open our hearts to the spiritual dimension, to the truth underneath the water that shows itself as the wave. And not just, if we just relate to the wave, remember, it's terrifying there. Yeah. So the success of our practice depends on that. So for me, I hear that as encouragement to really take the time to look deeply and make sure that my mind doesn't get caught in this, that, better, worse, dislike, like, failure, success. And if I do see the attachment there, if I do see my suffering there, then I have an object to practice with, to hold, to soften, and to understand. I have a doorway to go through to touch signlessness. It's so fun, actually. You can use some pretty complex signing to get through into signlessness. Let's do a quick one. This is fun. All right. Peacefulness. The experience of peacefulness. What is it? Tell me. Give me a word. What is peacefulness? Softening. More. Whoa. You're not going to let me turn around, are you guys? Ease. Space. More. Quiet. Contentment. Welcoming. Tranquility. Non-judgment. Is that what I heard? Whoops. I forget how to spell when I'm writing so fast. Justice. Equanimity. All right. Wow. Okay. Peacefulness is serenity, non-judgment, softening, calm, openness, justice, ease, space, equanimity, quiet, contentment, welcoming, tranquility, and probably many, many, many more signs that we could offer to try to share with one another what peacefulness is. I am not satisfied. I guess I'm not at peace with this. So, this is peacefulness, calm. So I don't need peacefulness. I could just say calm, because calm is peaceful, right? No. No, calm is calm. Ease. Ease is peacefulness. No, ease is ease. What's peacefulness? Justice. Justice. Justice is justice. What's peacefulness? And I could go on and really have quite a problem here, because none of these is precisely peacefulness. They are what they are, and peacefulness is what it is. What is it? My mind can't do this. Our mind can't figure it out. If you can, you write me a dissertation. A short one. And yet, calm is peacefulness, and ease and justice and openness and all these things, they are peacefulness, right? But when I look into peacefulness, I can't find it. We can't find it. We can only find what is around it, or a way of looking at it or trying to get there, but you can't find it. It is empty of itself. And it's full of all this other stuff. It's full of its non-self elements. It's made entirely of non-self elements. And yet we would all say, but I know what peacefulness is. Right? But it's not, it doesn't live on the level of sign, of a mark, of an appearance, of a designation. The truth of peacefulness is not something we can catch with a designation, but we can know it. We can be peace, be peaceful. And we clearly experience that. But we can't have it. We can't take it. It's not a sign, it's not a mark, it's something else. It lives, its truth lives somewhere else, right? I would like to also invite a wider look here, which started to happen. Peacefulness is made of everything. Not things that are just like peace, but things that are quite unlike peace. To know peacefulness, we must also know, right? Yeah. Anger, noise, injustice. Yeah. Violence, fear. So even when we look deeply into peacefulness, we find all these other things too. Right? It just shows how incredibly powerful every little moment of our life is. That it contains so much. Right? And that to walk around in the world just relating on signs and marks is like, it's so tiny. Right? Meaning. There's a word, and it's on the board, and you can read it, but it means something. And that meaning lives in us. Right? It's not something that ideas and words, signs and marks can have, can encapsulate. This is the meaning of emptiness. Right? So when you read the Heart Sutra, or the insight that brings us to the other shore, and you see that, the Bodhisattva Avalokita, while moving in the deep course of perfect understanding, right? Shone light on body, feelings, perceptions, meditated on themselves and on the world, touched emptiness, right? And was liberated from suffering. Because when we can go from the wave into the water, we don't have to fear going up and down our beginning and our end. And when we really know that, we can relate to each other. We build friendships based on that. When you take care of someone who's sick, when you're grieving for someone who died, apply these practices, these teachings. Find out how they continue and transform in multitudes of ways in you and around you in the world. Discover them. 6 years after Thai's mother died, he stood on a porch under a full moon and suddenly woke up in his heart to experience his mother as the light of the moon caressing his cheek. He allowed that to happen through deep looking, allowed himself to fully trust that she was more than her body and lived in the world in so many wonderful ways. And he allowed this wonder of the moonlight caressing his cheek to comfort him as his mother's hand. Right? He found her continuation, her transformation in the world. Like we find the continuation and transformations of the bodhisattvas manifesting in the world. But we look deeply to find these things. We don't see them on the surface. On the surface, it looks as if we are ill. It looks as if someone has died and they're gone. But when we look deeply, it's not like that. They were never really contained in their bodies. They were always so much more. all through their life, their radiance in the spiritual dimensions was affecting us and countless beings around us. We just focused on their body. And we learn another way of relating to them in order to hold and continue to celebrate and renew our relationship, just like you would if you were cooking or eating or hanging out with them. You'll invest yourself to deepen your relationship with them. Well, now we invest ourselves in deepening our relationships with them on a different dimension, in a different way. Last night I was talking about, in the happy circle, about my wanting to cultivate a joy, but the joy that was coming from grief. And it's because this summer I had to decide to end my dog's life. She's a good friend. Never disparaging. And there's grief there, there's change that I'm getting used to on the relative dimension. Walking in a door. She's not there. That level of process, right? That's in the relative dimension. And I hold that and I'm sad. And sometimes I wish it could be different. But then I also can recognize that those kinds of thoughts cause me more suffering. And that I'd be better suited to think in a different way. And that's what I mean by that joy that is arising from grief, because through this experience, she opens my heart. And then with that heart open, I can touch a moment of life so deeply. And I find her, through that, it's her life that is inspiring me to wake up to little wonders here and there through the day. And it's so wonderful. It's a complete transformation of the experience of loss to one of discovery. And there's a bitterness in it, but bitterness is one of the flavors of life. Ask any good cook, right? And that's there, right? And there's a way to find joy through that. And the way for me has been through using the eyes of interbeing and impermanence, through touching life deeply, through exploring the non-self nature of myself, and in this case, my puppy, right? And what a wonderful way to celebrate and honor the beauty of the lives of our friends and our families, friends who are humans and friends who are not human, right? And this practice just enriches and makes it so deep and so lovely. I wasn't expecting to share about that, but it's very real for me. And it's one of the ways that I feel like I am putting into practice. I am experiencing shift and transformation in my experience of that loss, so of that challenge in my life through the practice. Yeah. So I could put my puppy there, right? This is a meditation. I put her, instead of peacefulness, put her there. And I say, who is she? What is she? And I will start to find it, right? Right. And at first it's ideas, and slowly your heart can open to this deeper dimension of who this being truly is on the earth. Yeah. So happy to have had a few days to practice with you all, dear friends. I'm sure I'm over time. What is it?
Well, we're supposed to have till 12:15, but including closing circles, so we're still
Okay. Well, I'm so happy to be able to practice with you up here in the upper heartland of our continent. And And I hope that the retreat has been nourishing and has, I hope that beyond what we experience between each other, there really is a radiance or a light or a ripple that moves out or is already, gotta look like this, is already moving out. Because it's not just our bodies that carry this practice into the world, right? So already moving out into the world as a kind of presence and understanding and healing. Thank you for building community for 3 long days together. Let's listen.